It's been a magical season for the BYU football program for obvious reasons, but the good news is even though the Cougars were on a bye, it got even better this past weekend. Let's talk about it.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? I'm Jake Hatch, your host here on Locked On Cougars, resident BYU insider. Thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first view and or listen of the day. And obviously a big thank you to all of you who like to call our everydayers right here on your original daily podcast focused on the BYU Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. You can start today with a $5 bet, and if it wins, $150 in bonus bets coming into your account right alongside your winnings on that first bet. Go to FanDuel.com to learn more and get started today. All right, let's talk BYU football right out of the chute here. And the good news is for BYU is they still remain ranked 9th in the country. And obviously that is now across the board as the coaches poll reflects that, with BYU moving up 3 spots this past weekend when it comes to that poll. And the good news is those polls become irrelevant pretty quickly here with the first iteration of the college football playoff rankings coming out this week. Now, BYU, by virtue of the fact that they're still 5-0 in the conference, are going to be projected as a top 4 team in the college football playoff rankings. I'd be absolutely floored if they are not, because they are now the out-and-out favorites to make a run towards the Big 12 title. Many of you might have seen it. If you did not, Iowa State lost this past weekend, leaving BYU as the lone team in the Big 12 that does not have a loss on the year. The Cougars are 8-0, they're 5-0, and now the best part is they control their fate when it comes to their postseason destination. BYU conservatively can go 3-1 down the stretch here and still be in Arlington, Texas. Now, there's a lot of concern about this week's game. Obviously, it's the rivalry game. Crazy things happen when BYU and Utah get together. That obviously comes into the conversation. But BYU could easily lose that game, win their final 3 games after that against Kansas, Arizona State, and Houston, and still find themselves playing for Big 12 supremacy in AT&T Stadium in early December. That is the good news for BYU, is they have handled their business. They're one of 5 teams left in college football without a blemish on their resume. It is absolutely incredible to consider what BYU is doing right now. And the other thing about this is the only other team that has multiple wins over top 25 teams, if not actually a win over a top 25 team period, is Ohio State. They and BYU. Indiana's out there, Army's out there. We get that, but they have not played near the caliber of schedule that BYU has. And for the life of me, I don't get why Indiana passed BYU in the AP poll this week, because if you look at the strength of record and strength of schedule, BYU is absolutely dwarfing what Indiana is doing, but that kind of shows you the machinations and the politics behind what we like to call the Big 2 out there with the Big 10 and the SEC. Indiana is not going to play a ranked team this season going into that Big 12 title game should they finish the season unbeaten. It's incredible to consider, but in this day and age of these supersized conferences, that's the reality of what we're doing. And I don't mean to diminish what Indiana is doing. I'm more talking about BYU because this is a BYU-centric podcast. And the good news is the Cougars, so long as they handle their business, they take it 1 week at a time, they continue to win on the field, they will be playing for the postseason and likely even potentially with a loss in the conference title game, still playing in the college football playoff. Eat your heart out, everybody, but BYU is on their way to an incredible, incredible thing. I love the expanded playoff. I have been an advocate for it since the day they announced they were going to have an official playoff in college football. And the fact that BYU in the first year of the expanded 12-team playoff, even with maybe a loss in a conference title game, could find themselves playing for a national championship, man, what an incredible year it's been for BYU, and how much better can it get down the stretch here? That's the good news if you're a Cougar fan. The other thing is, in my conversations with folks in and around the BYU football program, is this team, they're wholly focused on this week, as they should be, because like I said, it's the rivalry game, it's Utah and everything, but it's been the focus every single game this year. They look at it 1 week at a time. There's no peeking ahead saying, all right, who we got after this? Oh, Kansas? No, there's none of that. This BYU team knows that if they want to live the dream or dreams that they have had, the goals they had as a team, and a lot of them do write down, and BYU did it among many other programs out there, to win a national title this year, they know what they have to do. They got to go out there and handle their business. And this is a team I really, really appreciate the way they have gone about handling their business this year. There's not been a lot of off-field distractions. There's not been a lot of the chatter about guys thinking, oh, we should deserve this, we deserve that. There's been very little of that relative to BYU, and I can appreciate that. It's a message that Kalani Sitake and his coaches have been preaching at these guys, saying, ignore the haters out there. Go out there and prove yourself on the field and let them dissect it any which way they want to. And that's the way it should be for BYU football. If they continue to win on the football field, nobody can take this away from them. That's the exciting part if you're a Cougar fan. This is not a popularity contest. This is not win and maybe we'll let you in. No, win and you are in. That is the glory of this new expanded playoff and the automatic berths that are being offered to the Big 12 among other autonomous 5 conferences, or autonomy 4 now conferences, aka the Power 4. And BYU will be the 4th team probably, because they're going to be ranked 9th, and the other projected conference champions will probably get the 1, 2, and 3 seeds. But that's great news for the Cougars, is they will be projected to play in the Fiesta Bowl. And everything is out there for them. They could get a first-round bye. They could have a potential to win 3 games and win a national title. Consider where BYU was at the beginning of this year. And some of you have asked me to kind of recap what got BYU to this point. Maybe we'll do that on a future edition this week, and we can talk more about the path to getting to where BYU's at right now. But it's been absolutely incredible to consider what BYU has done. This year started with so many question marks around this team, so many question marks around different positions, particularly the quarterback position and Jake Retzlaff. Remember, that dominated headlines for months leading up to this year. The good news is all that is just behind us, speaking proverbially for all, it's all behind. And the nice part is all BYU has to look forward to is if they continue to win, they are going to live the dream that they had at the beginning of the season, when very few people, yours truly included, thought they could accomplish what they've accomplished to this point. I said it once, and I'll reiterate it. My goal for BYU this season was to go 6-6. It's obviously been reframed, and my goal for BYU is to be in the college football playoff. Maybe you do only go one and done in the playoff. You still made the playoff field. You still were in the mix to win a national title. Nobody can take that away from you. And that's the exciting part if you're a Cougar fan right now, is everything is out there. If you bought tickets to the Big 12 title game down there in Arlington, you're looking at Fiesta Bowl tickets saying, maybe I should purchase some flights to Dallas or Phoenix. Maybe you should do that. And guess what? Bank it away, manifest it, do whatever you got to do, because everything is right there for BYU, and it's completely within their control. They don't have to rely on anybody else out there to win or lose or do anything to help them live their dream of putting together what I would consider to be one of the conservatively top 5 seasons in BYU football history if they pull this off. I really do think that's the trajectory this campaign is on for Kalani Sitake and the Cougars. And it has come seemingly out of nowhere. But the nice part is this team, they believe in themselves. They don't really care about the outside noise. And so long as they continue to handle their business on the gridiron, everything is right there for them. All right, we're going to talk coming up next a little bit about the recruiting side of things. I mentioned it. I did a special edition on Saturday talking about the additions of Alai, Kalaniuvalu, if I can pronounce his name correctly once again, and Austin Pay, 2 offensive line prospects BYU added by virtue of the fact that they've been absolutely killing it on the football field. Well, maybe we should be, talking a little more highly about the coaches who helped secure those guys and get them into BYU with their commitments. We'll talk about that coming up next, right here on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at 5 Hour Energy. Now, all of us obviously are busy. We're tired. We got a lot of things going on. But if you want to be a passionate football fan, it's not just a hobby. We all know this. It's a way of life. I know those of you out there who are big-time tailgaters, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It takes a lot of energy to power through your all-day tailgates, touchdown celebrations, or even an overtime or two if it comes to it. And that's why they have created at 5 Hour Energy the Stand the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot with a special flavor called Fan Fuel, the energy shot from just for super fans like you to get you through whatever you're looking to do. The best part is every single one of us can use this in any type of circumstance we're in. Many of you know I'm a broadcaster. Guess what? I've got to power through these broadcasts, and considering it's going to be a late night this Saturday night, I may need something like a 5-hour energy, a stand the fan fuel shot to get me through those broadcasts. Good news is 5-hour energy knows exactly what team you root for, no matter what team you root for, I should say. In this case, BYU. Being a fan requires heart, soul, and a whole lot of energy. So whether you're prepping for the big tailgate or ironing your jersey or your game day to-do list is always a mile long. And that's why this limited edition Stand the Fan 5-hour energy shot is here to keep you fueled throughout the season. So go check it out today. It's available at 5hourenergy.com. It's obviously shipped nationwide, and get it today at 5hourenergy.com. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first view and or listen of the day. Appreciate all of you for being with us here on the podcast. All right, BYU, if you missed it over the weekend, added 2 new additions to the recruiting class via the offensive line. Those being 4-star offensive line prospect Alai Kalaniuvalu out of Bishop Gorman High School, and then high 3-star talent Austin Pay out of Lone Peak High School up in Alpine, Utah. I talked more in depth about what those 2 are going to bring to BYU on our special edition Saturday. So if you want to go back and listen to that, you can get more of my thoughts on that. But the thing I wanted to talk about today is that, remember last year, BYU cleaned up absolutely incredibly well in the final stages of the recruiting cycle heading into National Signing Day in February. Remember, Falatau Satuala was one of the crown jewels, if not the crown jewel of last season's recruiting class. And BYU was picking up a lot of guys late in that recruiting cycle. And they're going to, I think, fill a similar type of way this year, because BYU, if you looked at the recruiting rankings throughout most of the cycle so far, they've been kind of a middling to lower tier Big 12 program out there. But the additions of Kalaniuvalu and Austin Pay have now pushed BYU's recruiting ranking, according to 24/7 Sports, to near the 50ish range, which BYU finished inside the top 40 last year with their strong close. The nice part is the Cougars are trending towards that right now. And the crazy thing about this is, remember, last year, Jay Hill could do no wrong. He was an absolute master when it came to recruiting. He closed out BYU's recruiting class extremely well, bringing a number of high-level defensive talents into BYU. And there was some question, well, why can't the offensive staff match what BYU's defensive staff is doing? Well, if you're going to have that argument from last year, you probably need to start offering those flowers to this BYU offensive staff. Because if you look at it right now, 4 of BYU's top 5 rated recruits right now are offensive players. Obviously, the crown jewel right now is Alai Kalaniuvalu with a 90 rating. Austin Pay, number 2 with an 89 rating. Those 2, you can point directly to TJ Woods and his recruiting efforts. I remember when he was hired at BYU, that there were some people saying, he's coming from Georgia Southern. What can he really do? Folks, if you understand what TJ Woods' background is, this is a guy who's worked at the Power 5 level multiple stops. Wisconsin, Oregon State. He has been all over the Power 5, and wherever he has gone, the recruiting has followed him. He's got BYU's top 2 rated offensive prospects, and he got them both committed this past weekend. Props to him. LaMason Waller, an 88 rating from Hesperia, California. He's been a long-time commit. Kalani Sitake locked him in. Aaron Roderick played a huge role, by the way, as I understand it, for LaMason as well. And then if you scroll down just a little bit further, Andrew Williams, another offensive tackle prospect, is BYU's 5th rated recruit in this recruiting class. The only one in the top 5 defensively is Ulavai Fatuli, which, by the way, is an incredible prospect. I'm not saying that you need to bow down and say, oh, I'm so sorry to Aaron Roderick and the BYU offensive staff. But let's understand that BYU's got a really, really good thing going recruiting here. They've got coaches who are absolutely dogs when it comes to getting out on the recruiting trail. And that goes from Aaron Roderick, that goes to Jay Hill, it goes to every one of their assistant coaches, and more importantly, guys behind the scenes. Justin Anderson, Tyus Moe, Jack Demin. I don't have a direct role in that anymore, but he still has a role when guys get on campus. We also look at like Vince Feula. You look at Brandon Bradley. BYU's got a very, very strong contingent of recruiters right now. And I have been very pointed in my criticism saying that BYU needs more staffers when it comes to recruiting. I still believe they can add more to that side of things, but you can't take away anything that BYU is doing right now on the recruiting front, especially with this offensive staff. The hires of TJ Wood, the hire of what BYU made changes on that offensive staff, been absolute home runs. It's absolutely incredible to consider where they were at a year ago and where they're at right now. And I didn't think BYU's offensive staff was lacking to a significant degree last year when the recruiting rankings came in. the needs were that BYU needed to upgrade the defense, and Jay Hill went to work on that. This year, BYU understands there's going to be pieces, particularly on the offensive line, that are going to need to be replaced. And TJ Woods, he's got 3 of BYU's top 5 rated offensive players and 3 of the top 5 rated recruits, period, as a way to hopefully bolster BYU's offensive line ranks. Now, Austin Pay and Alai Kalaniuvalu are both going to go on missions before enrolling at BYU. So it's going to be a few years before you ultimately see them suit up for the Cougars. But that's a thing you bank away for the future. And the nice part is there are a lot of other pieces out there. I really like what BYU's done on the recruiting front. I know that they're not necessarily recruiting top-tier talents because the vast majority of their class are still 3-star guys. But I say it once, I'll say it again. BYU is a developmental program. They will bring in 3-star talents, but get 4- and 5-star production out of those talents. Yes, it would be great to get more 4- and 5-star talents to Provo. And in time, if BYU wins like they're winning right now and you show a consistent track record, guess what? Those doors will open. But the nice part is I really like where BYU recruiting is at the current time, and particularly with this offensive staff. It's really cool to see them matching what Jay Hill, the juice that Jay Hill brought to BYU's defensive side of things when it came to recruiting. The offensive staff has matched that. That goes for every one of the coaches on this staff. And I really appreciate the fact that they're playing off one another. The nice part is it's not just like, okay, those are offensive guys, you recruit them, and we'll recruit our defensive guys, speaking for BYU staff. There's been a lot of crossover on this. Guys will go out on the road. They'll be recruiting guys. They may mention, if it says it's an offensive staff member, they may be out recruiting a wide receiver or a running back, but they're out there at these different high schools. And if they mention to somebody, they're looking at defensive players as well, and a guy pops up, guess what? They'll make a phone call to whoever is a corresponding position coach on the defensive staff, and they will go out there and say, hey, we're BYU. This is what we got. I'd like to get you in touch with so-and-so assistant coach so you can learn more about this university. It's a really, really nice dynamic that BYU has going in recruiting right now. Once again, I still believe you can make it even better with some additions to the back-end staff, speaking of full-time staffers to come in and work on the relationship side of things, because these assistant coaches are already busy enough making game plans and coaching up their players and developing the talent that's already in Provo. So if you can add a couple more pieces in terms of whether they're graduate assistants, full-time assistants. I know they have student assistants out there, but I'd like to have people who make it their full-time job to go out and love up these recruits, because it's a critical thing in this day and age with NIL involved, the transfer portal, everything out there when it comes to BYU trying to build these relationships with these players. They need to build strong, very strong relationships. And obviously that comes with those assistant coaches, but it's nice to have other people who can step in and send a note to a player, or we see a lot of the time these graphics going out to these recruits. Stay more on top of that and build these relationships. And I think as you do that, BYU is going to see an uptick. And the great part about this is BYU's got a very strong recruiting class. They got 18 commits right now in this class, and they're pretty stratified both offensively and defensively. And the crazy thing is, some of my favorite additions, like speaking of guys that are committed to BYU, are actually like rated far lower on the recruiting rankings than I would have had them. But that's why I'm not in the recruiting rankings business, because I'm a bit biased when it comes to my film evaluations of guys. But I really do appreciate the way that BYU's gone about this. They've got very, very good guys on board. Speaking of these recruits coming into BYU. But this year, yeah, if you believe that the BYU defensive staff was absolutely incredible on the recruiting side of things, and they could do no wrong last year, I want you to give the same type of plaudits to what BYU's doing offensively, because they have absolutely matched, and in this case right now, they have surpassed the defensive staff in terms of, if you want to go by sheer recruiting rankings, the BYU offensive staff should be patting themselves on the back right now, in particular, TJ Woods. Really cool stuff. But the nice part is, I don't think any one of them out there, any of these coaches, would tell you, yeah, it's all me, because I think that they've got a really good dynamic with this staff. They all know what they're chasing. And similar to this BYU football team, which we talked about a little bit earlier on, they know that they're chasing the same goal. Yes, there are guys who are uber competitive in that coaching staff who want nothing more than to have the best athletes in their position group, if not on their side of the football. But they understand that, hey, we are here to work cohesively as a unit. I'm using some hand motions here if you're watching this on YouTube. We're here to work as a unit for the ultimate good of this football program. What is the ultimate good? to win and to win at a high level. And they're winning at a high level right now. And I do think, given some adequate time here, as BYU continues to win on the football field and maybe makes a run at the college football playoff, you could see some more recruiting wins, or talking flips of there's a certain lineman out there who's got a brother who's committed, the last name Vete. Many of you know that Siosua is committed to Stanford. Could BYU flip him down the stretch here? Could they get a guy like McCabe Madsen, who's one of the top-rated, just uncommitted players in the entire recruiting class out there? Could they get those guys to join up with BYU? Well, hope is that they will do that, but it obviously is incumbent upon them to continue to build the relationships, and more importantly, you continue to win. If you win, players want to play for winning programs, and if BYU can prove they're our winner, they're going to win out on the recruiting front as well. All right, we'll finish up today's show, flipping over to basketball just for a moment, because today's opening day for college basketball. Now, BYU will not be taken to the hardwoods tonight. Their actual season opener is tomorrow night against Central Arkansas, but I still wanted to do a little bit of a season preview for BYU, some superlatives of what I expect from this BYU basketball squad, some predictions, and a whole lot more, and we'll get to that momentarily right here on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Now, FanDuel is here for you guys when it comes to your sports betting needs. And the nice part is you can get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, as they are America's #1 sports book. Because right now, new customers bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. Simple as that. FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to make your place your bets on the NFL or any other sport all in one place. The nice part is BYU this week, if you believe in the Cougars as being a favorite, well, according to our friends at FanDuel, as of recording this podcast, they're 4.5-point favorites on the road against the Utes in Rice-Eccles Stadium. So when you get the hunch in the middle of a game or the game coming this Saturday, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you're placing your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets once again if your first $5 bet wins. Simple as that. That's FanDuel.com to get started once again today. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first view and or listen of the day. If you have not done so already, why are you waiting on joining the Locked On Cougars Insider Group? I'm passing along insider tidbits, what I'm hearing about BYU sports, football, and basketball in particular, and it comes to your phone in the form of a text message. It doesn't have much more direct and intimate than that, and the nice part is you can fire back with text of your own and have one-on-one conversations. So if you want to be a part of that, join up today. It's our Locked On Cougars Insider Group, and it's a 14-day free trial, so you get two full weeks to see if it's the right option for you, and just $5 a month afterwards. And hope you guys would join us in very short order, to the many of you who have already joined the Locked On Cougars Insider Group. All right. Before we go on today's show, let's talk some BYU basketball. Obviously, a big season ahead for BYU because Kevin Young is making his debut as BYU basketball head coach. It's been a whirlwind offseason for BYU basketball. Remember, the hire of Kevin Young in the first place, after Mark Pope spurned BYU and headed to Kentucky. It's incredible to consider that BYU maybe has upgraded at the coaching position just based on how the offseason has gone. Mark Pope was not a bad coach by any means, but remember, the recruiting for BYU has seen a major uptick under Kevin Young. They have brought in top-tier talent. They have brought in guys who are considered to be one-and-done prospects, most notably Egor Demin, as well as Kanon Catchings, but as even discount a guy like Mihailo Boskovic. Most of those guys are here to prove that they can play at an NBA level, and that's what Kevin Young's whole goal is. Crazy thing is they've currently got the inside track, according to most people, at the #1 recruit in the upcoming recruiting cycle in AJ DeBonsa. It has been absolutely incredible to watch BYU do what they have done through this offseason, but none of it really works unless you actually go out there and win on the hardwoods. And that's what BYU is going to get going with tomorrow when Central Arkansas is in town. I'm looking forward to this matchup because we saw a lot from BYU in that exhibition game this past weekend against Colorado Christian, but I want to see more of, okay, how tight is the rotation going to be early this season? Is it going to be as open as it was against Colorado Christian, where you saw 10 and 11 and 12 guys playing for BYU? We'll see. I look forward to that. But I wanted to kind of do a season preview and talk about what I am predicting for BYU this year. I will say it right at the outset is that BYU in the Big 12, it is going to be an absolutely tough year for the Big 12 overall. We're talking, this is a league. They're going to chew each other up and spit each other out. It is going to be a league where I could very easily see the winning team, the top team at the end of the conference season, having 3 or 4 losses. That is absolutely in play here. Now, will there be a team that kind of rises to the top and maybe makes a magical run? Maybe so. But As it stands right now, I just don't see that happening. So where do I think BYU fits in this? I am going to say right now, I believe BYU will finish 5th place once again this year in the Big 12 Conference. And crazily enough, if they finish 5th place once again this year, they're likely going to be a 5th or a 6th seed once again in the NCAA tournament. And considering how tough this league could be, that could be even higher when it comes to the projected rankings. But I'm projecting BYU with a 5th place finish. So matching what Mark Pope did last year. And the crazy thing is the Big 12 on paper appears to be even more rugged than it was in a season ago. And many of us recall how rugged it was for BYU. It is going to be a really, really tough thing for BYU to match what they did a season ago. But I've got faith that Kevin Young, he knows what he's doing out there. I have been very impressed with the way he has approached his business. He's a no-nonsense guy. He talks so monotone that it almost feels like he's disinterested at times, but that's just the way he operates. He's a people person. He's a player's coach. He wants to have good relationships with the guys that he's coaching up. And they play like they respect him and love him for what he has offered to them. And that kind of extends back to his time in the NBA. So my projection, BYU finishes 5th once again in the league. And we'll revisit these at the end of the year and see if I was right or if I was absolutely dead wrong, because that's the glory of putting this on the record, because it'll come back to bite me in the butt. You all will remind me. I can very easily see that happening. Other things I'm projecting. I believe that Egor Demin is absolutely going to be in play for the freshman of the year, if not newcomer of the year for the Big 12 Conference. I think this is a kid that is just waiting to break out. It's crazy to think that he's had 0 points the other night, still had 11 assists, and had a major impact on a blowout win for BYU, and he barely played. It felt like, what did he play, 20 minutes in that one? This is a kid who is absolutely awesome, and he's being projected as a top-tier lottery talent in the upcoming NBA draft. I think between him, and also add Kanon Catchings to this conversation, the newcomer may be a stretch too far for a guy like Kanon Catchings. They usually like to separate the freshman and the newcomer of the year. But Kanon Catchings, his shooting stroke, it's absolutely pure. I think if given the requisite time on the court, Kanon Catchings will be one of BYU's top 3 scorers this year. I really believe that. That's the type of talent these two contain within them. And I've barely seen them play 20 minutes each in the season, but everything I've heard / what I have seen indicates to me that they are the type of talents that can help lift BYU to heights hitherto not seen in Provo, Utah. It is absolutely incredible to consider what those two are capable of. I also will say this. I think you'll see 3 Cougars. You can mix and match whoever. 3 Cougars, whether it's Egor Demin, Kanon Catchings, Dallin Hall, Fousseyni Traore, Keba Keita. I think 3 Cougars will make the season-end all Big 12 teams. Now, there are 3 full teams that the Big 12 announces, at least they did last year, when it came to their postseason awards. I believe you'll see 3 Cougars on that list. Remember, last year, BYU only got 1. Jackson Robinson was the 6th man of the year and was on the was he on the 3rd team? I'm gonna have to look that up here. But the nice part is everything is out there for BYU to play for. So let's see. Jackson Robinson was actually honorable mention. So he didn't even make the all Big 12 team last year. So I'm making a bold prediction. I think 3 Cougars make the all Big 12 teams when BYU didn't even have a single guy make it last year, finishing as the 5th place team. Maybe that's a stretch. Maybe I should back it off to 2. But I guess maybe in some ways, if BYU has 3 all Big 12 honorees, should they be higher than 5th place? That's an argument to be made as well. But I really do think this is going to be a really, really rugged season. And I think BYU's up for it. I think BYU's got a really good staff. I think Will Voigt, Chris Burgess, on down the assistant coaching pool that BYU has assembled. They've got top-tier coaching. They've got incredible player development. They've got a full-time nutritionist with BYU now. Every resource has been given to Kevin Young since coming to BYU. Now, can he go out there and match essentially the resources being given to him? Can he match the level of expectations that have been heaped upon this team as well? Well, that remains to be determined. We'll talk more about Central Arkansas on tomorrow's show, but I'm excited for this. I think there's a lot to play for BYU. Everything is out there. And similar to the BYU football program, this BYU basketball team, there's a bit of an unknown quantity to them just because of the fact that Kevin Young is new. There's a whole new lineup for BYU. There's a lot of holdovers. I like what Dallin Hall. I like Richie Saunders. I like Fousseyni Traore. I like Trevin. I like all the talent that BYU has here. Now, can Kevin Young mold it into the image of what he envisions for this basketball program? And will that image end up with a highly successful basketball season. You may consider 5th place not be all that successful. I think with how good this Big 12 is, it'd be very successful to see BYU finish in that rank in the conference, because projections have BYU finishing 9th and 10th in a lot of the preseason predictions. So big season ahead, obviously, and a lot to track, but I am up for it. I'm excited for it, and I can't wait to be out at the Marriott Center tomorrow night, ignoring some other stuff going on in the world tomorrow night while we watch BYU basketball for a couple of hours at least. All right. So thank you as always. Once again, that we'll wrap it up here for this edition of Locked On Cougars. Thank you for making it your first view and or listen to the day. And as always, thank you to all of you who are everydayers. And we'll be back with you guys again tomorrow, right here on Locked On Cougars.